Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Rich Edson in for Brett Baer. Breaking tonight, the defense is presenting its case in Hunter Biden's felony gun charges trial. The prosecution rested this morning. The big question this evening, will the defendant take the stand when court resumes Monday? But first, there is a new development in the criminal case against former President Trump. It resulted in his conviction last week on 34 felony counts. It involves a social media post that may have foreshadowed that outcome. Correspondent David Spunt is in Wilmington, Delaware tonight with the details. Hello, David.
Rich, good evening. This is an interesting development. The verdict in Donald Trump's Manhattan case came out on May 30th, the day before May 29th. The judge announced today to both parties that someone posted on social media they are a cousin of one of the jurors, and they said the juror told them that Donald Trump would be convicted, essentially foreshadowing that conviction a day later on May 30th. Fox News reached out to Donald Trump's legal team, and we're told that they are investigating. We're also told the court is investigating, and the post was taken down. But certainly that is curious. There was a social media post about Donald Trump's conviction, purportedly from a cousin of one of the jurors, just one day before the actual conviction. I am in Wilmington, Delaware, with this federal courthouse behind me because big news in the Hunter Biden federal gun case today. This weekend, Abby Lowell, Hunter Biden's attorney, has a big decision to make whether or not to allow Hunter Biden to testify in his own defense on Monday. Meanwhile, today, an emotionally charged day with Hunter Biden's eldest daughter on the stand, giving him moral support. Hunter Biden's eldest daughter admitted to jurors she was nervous, but wove a positive narrative of her father when she saw him in October 2018. That was when Hunter bought the .38 caliber Colt revolver at the center of the case. Naomi Biden said she borrowed her dad's truck to move into a new apartment in New York City days after the gun purchase, and testified she saw no evidence of drugs in the vehicle. Hunter's overall demeanor at the time, quote, "He seemed great." That contrasted with testimony the day before from her aunt, who was in a romantic relationship with Hunter at the time. Hallie Biden says she found what she believed to be crack along with drug paraphernalia and the gun itself in that truck, only days after Naomi gave the truck back to her dad. Hunter Biden dabbed his eyes with a tissue as his daughter recounted their relationship. Hunter has said that it was his brother Bo's passing that triggered a depressive spiral into crack cocaine addiction. After my uncle died, things got bad, Naomi testified. When Naomi left the courtroom, she was in tears and hugged her dad. The First Lady flew in from France to sit in the front row once again to support Hunter. He's charged with lying on a federal gun form about whether he was still using drugs when he bought the gun on October 12, 2018. His lawyer, Abby Lowell, telling the court he may call his defendant to the stand on Monday. In testimony earlier today, Lowell tried to poke holes in the authenticity of that firearms transaction record, pressing gun store employees over whether there were two different versions of the form and if it was filled out properly. Lowell painted a picture of sloppy paperwork by store staff. I mentioned the First Lady in the courtroom. She was in the courtroom Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday, she was in France for D-Day commemoration event. She flew back to Wilmington. She was in the courtroom today. She's actually flying back to France later to be at a state dinner in France tomorrow, only to come back to the United States on Sunday here in Wilmington with the president. We've asked the White House a little bit more about these trips, who's paying for them, to try to find out a little bit more details. No answer yet from the White House on that. But Rich, big news if Hunter Biden does take the stand on Monday. If he doesn't, it's possible we go right into closing arguments, and it's potentially we could have a verdict by late Monday. Rich?
Big morning Monday. David Spunt live for us in Wilmington. David, thank you. President Biden says the echoes of the voices of the men who died on D-Day are asking us to defend democracy and to stand up to aggression abroad and at home. The president's address at historic Pointe du Hoc had no specific reference to his likely Election Day opponent, but the implications were apparent. While in France, the president had apologized to Ukraine's leader for the delay in getting crucial military aid to his country. Congressional correspondent Aisha Hasni wraps it all up for us tonight from the White House. Good evening, Aisha.
Rich, good evening to you. And that apology tonight is getting a lot of reaction from Republicans who the president really threw under the bus on a global stage, as he also called on everyone to unite in the name of democracy.
They're not asking us to scale these cliffs, but they're asking us to stay true to what America stands for.
On the stunning cliffs of Point du Hoc, President Biden made a case for democracy, harking back to President Reagan's 1984 speech.
These are the boys of Point du Hoc. These are the men who took the cliffs.
To come here, simply to remember, the ghost of Point du Hoc isn't enough. We need to hear them.
Now President Biden and President Reagan have spoken in this exact spot. In the front of the stage, the scars of war, craters from munitions that exploded on D-Day. Behind the stage, 98-foot-tall cliffs that Army Rangers had to scale to take out Germans positioned in this bunker.
And now, drawing a parallel to the Russian invaders in Ukraine, the president is releasing another $225 million munitions package, but drawing the line again on sending troops, despite French President Emmanuel Macron not closing the door on it.
There's not going to be U.S. boots on the ground in combat in Ukraine.
Biden also apologized to President Volodymyr Zelensky for the months-long delay in sending aid, blaming congressional Republicans.
I apologize for those weeks of not knowing. We had trouble getting the bill that we had to pass that had the money in it from some of our very conservative members who were holding it up.
Congressman Mike Waltz, a decorated Green Beret who led lawmakers to honor D-Day veterans, shot back at Biden over his war strategy, writing, "Biden's too little too late strategy and lack of a plan has bogged down this conflict."
And Rich, tonight the president is in Paris. He will have some official meetings with President Macron tomorrow, and then he will attend that state dinner that David mentioned tomorrow evening. Rich?
Aisha Hashney, live for us at the White House. Aisha, thank you. Former president and presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump tells Sean Hannity he will likely wait until the GOP convention to announce his running mate. Mr. Trump is in California for campaign fundraisers after starting his Western swing yesterday in Phoenix. That is where senior correspondent Alicia Cunha is tonight.
Thank you very much. Wow.
Coming off his stop in Arizona, where in the latest Fox News poll he leads President Biden by 5%, former President Trump headed west, attempting to turn his felony conviction into California gold. Last night was the first of 3 big dollar events where tech investors and hosts of the All In podcast, David Sachs and Chamath Palihapitiya, helped Trump raise $12 million at a private Silicon Valley fundraiser.
You had tremendous turnout. We couldn't fit one more seat in the place. We were completely sold out.
On X, Sachs endorsing Trump, writing, "My reasons rest on 4 main issues that I think are vital to American prosperity, security, and stability. Issues where the Biden administration has veered badly off course and where I believe President Trump can lead us back. Those issues, the economy, foreign policy, the border, and, quote, lawfare."
I don't think that tech investors are any different from anybody else. They're seeing the same things. They're experiencing the same things that the rest of California is seeing. And, the tides are turning for them, too.
Typically more friendly territory for Democrats, Biden has repeatedly tapped into this blue state's donor ATM and is planning to do so again this month with reported headliners Julia Roberts and George Clooney. As for Trump, his post-verdict war chest already holds $141 million in self-reported funds from the campaign and Republican National Committee, plus $150 million from organizations backing the former president. And as the campaign looks toward the GOP convention in July, Sean Hannity asked Trump if he's close to picking a running mate.
Well, yeah, but I think I'll announce who that person's going to be during the convention. I think that's pretty normal. During the convention, it'll be an interesting period of time. American comeback.
Back to those fundraising numbers, the Biden campaign has not yet released its haul for May. Rich?
Cunha in Phoenix. Alicia, thank you. America's employers added 272,000 jobs in May. That is up from April, and a sign that companies are still confident enough in the economy to keep hiring, despite persistently high interest rates. Stocks were down. The Dow lost 87. S&P 500 was off 6. NASDAQ dropped 40. For the week, the Dow was up 1/3 of a percentage point. S&P gained 1 1/3. NASDAQ jumped 2 1/3.
The unemployment rate, though, moving higher, it doesn't seem to be able to push back the tidal wave of what wages seem to be doing and job creation.
The probability of a rate cut declining because we're just not getting the weakness.
We need to be more confident that rate cuts will be in scope, and I don't know exactly when that will be.
Let's get some economic analysis. Liz Klayman, the host of the Klayman Countdown on Fox Business, joins us tonight from New York. Liz is also the host of the Fox News Radio podcast, Everyone Talks to Liz Klayman. Liz, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You look at these headline numbers, they seem great, but are there warning signs out there?
There are. The May job creation number, Rich, is being described as eye-popping because you saw it far outpaced nearly every single economist's prediction, by a long shot, by the way. The unemployment rate, here's the warning sign, did tick higher by 0.1% to 4%. That does end a 27-month stretch of sub-4% unemployment. Historically, though, that is still very low. The part that gets inflation watchers' hackles up was average hourly earnings. Wages rose 4.1% year over year. That was higher than expected. And when wages rise, employers often raise prices and their goods, right? And services in order to cover those increased wages. Is this a sign of wage price spiral, the likes of which we saw in the 70s? So far, no. The most recent inflation read we did get was the core PCE for April, personal consumption expenditure, came in at 2.8%. That is a far cry from the 9% level that it was at back in June of 22 when prices hit 40-year highs. So things are coming down. Second read on gross domestic product for the first quarter slowed to 1.3% versus the previous read of 1.6%. And while that's good, that's small comfort to many Americans who are still paying more than they were pre-pandemic for everything from food to shelter. The cost of borrowing money is still much higher, but the Federal Reserve has insisted it will not cut interest rates until it sees a sustained drop in inflation. Chairman Powell, Rich, as you know, has repeatedly said he will wait till inflation comes back to the target rate of 2%. Odds of a rate cut at the next meeting pretty much zero, but for September, now below 50%.
And you look at the potential for a rate cut, or what people are waiting for that rate cut, that translates directly to purchasing a home and borrowing money, purchasing a car and borrowing money. When can those folks get some relief?
Those folks will get some relief when, at least if you believe the Federal Reserve, inflation comes all the way down to 2%. But there has been a warning, Rich, that if you wait till then, you're behind the curve. And the Fed doesn't want to be behind the curve, so there's still a shot that we could see at least 0.25% cut in interest rates by the end of the year. We shall see.
And markets are looking for that too.
Oh, yeah, but markets are doing just fine without it.
Yeah, certainly are. Liz Klayman, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is acknowledging previously unreported trips overseas that his friend conservative businessman Harlan Crow paid for. Thomas has released his amended 2023 financial disclosure forms to include those earlier trips. The travel was not disclosed on the 2019 report. Financial reports for 7 other justices were released today. Only Samuel Alito did not release one, but he was given a 90-day extension. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's shows she was given concert tickets by Beyonce. A Massachusetts company is fighting back against shoplifters by putting police-style body cameras on its employees. It's the latest example of the efforts to deal with America's crime crisis. Here is national correspondent William Lajeunesse.
You give me my jacket right now. I'm not going to have you stealing from my store.
A manager at a boutique in Santa Monica catches a thief red-handed.
You are on video, and you are going to get arrested. If you don't give me back my jacket right now.
Theft costs stores and consumers $100 billion a year, according to the National Retail Federation. Well, now the parent company of TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and Home Goods has a plan to stop it.
When people know they're being recorded, again, most folks will change their behavior. Not everyone, but it does have a significant effect.
Retailers hope body cams like the ones worn by cops will help stores deter theft and improve employee safety.
People that are wearing body cameras are seeing 50% fewer confrontational incidents.
Also this week, like this Safeway in San Francisco, Dollar General eliminated self-checkout at 12,000 stores to reduce theft.
When I came and told the security people about it, they said, well, there's something we can do. We have to see them in action.
Thieves already know they're on surveillance cameras when walking in a store. It didn't, however, stop this woman. Boutique manager Amber Jolly says one answer is jail. Problem is, in California, police told her the thief didn't steal the $950 needed for prosecution.
As the law goes right now, there's nothing really that they can do because of the $950.
TJX says body cameras will be worn by loss prevention associates. While no one wants to be followed by the guy with a camera, the company says they actually de-escalate confrontations. Rich?
William LaJeunesse in Los Angeles. William, thank you. Up next, Bret Baier looks at efforts to bring home Americans detained in Russia. It's tonight's Whatever Happened To segment. First, what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 2 in San Francisco, as the Food and Drug Administration rescinds an order that briefly blocked sales of Juul Labs products, including its e-cigarette device. The move comes a few months after Juul sought an FDA authorization for new menthol-flavored pods in Houston, as the Justice Department files criminal charges against a whistleblower who was exposed a Texas hospital that was allegedly secretly conducting gender-affirming care on minors. The surgeon is accused of violating federal privacy laws. He's vowing to fight the charges and says the Justice Department is corrupt. And this is a live look at the Saratoga Racecourse in Saratoga Springs, New York, courtesy of Fox Sports. One of the big stories there tonight from Fox 23 in Albany. Due to a modernization project at Belmont Park, Saturday's Belmont Stakes is taking place at the venerable Saratoga Racecourse for the first time in the venue's vaunted 161-year history. The third leg of the Triple Crown features the winners of the Kentucky Derby and Preakness Stakes conducted in private and need to be resolved on a basis of reciprocity. In tonight's Whatever Happened To segment, my colleague Bret Baier looks at how the arrest of one American may have spurred detainments of a Gerskovich and others.
Thanks, Rich. In December of this year, Paul Whelan will mark 6 years in Russian prison. 1 month before that is the November presidential election. Experts familiar with the negotiations say there could be a window of opportunity for his release after the results are announced, no matter who wins the White House. In tonight's Whatever Happened To, we look at the status of Russia's imprisonment of Americans, including Whelan and Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gerskovich.
You know, when we do our work, none of the deals that we bring together are fair or just. And they get criticized a lot.
Mickey Bergman has spent the last decade helping free Americans detained overseas, including in Russia. He worked on negotiations alongside former ambassador to the United Nations, Bill Richardson. He now directs global reach for the Richardson Center for Global Engagement.
One of the criticism on this is that the more you do those deals, the more you incentivize taking more Americans.
Bergman and other experts believe recent arrests of U.S. citizens could be a response to failed negotiations to release Paul Whelan. We are learning new information tonight about the American citizen being detained in Russia on an espionage charge. In December of 2018, Whelan was in Russia for a friend's wedding when he was taken into custody on espionage charges.
If the detention is not appropriate, we will demand his immediate return.
Whelan was a corporate security executive and a Marine veteran. He had been visiting Russia since at least 2007 and had spent more than a decade cultivating friends and contacts in the country.
My brother's not a spy.
Experts believe his arrest was the Kremlin's response to the U.S. imprisonment of Russian citizen Maria Butina, who was convicted of conspiracy to act as a foreign agent.
If I were not Russian, that would be called social networking.
There were some discussions Butina could be swapped for Whelan, but those never gained momentum.
This is simply a dog and pony show for the media. You're not doing anything at all.
Butina was released in October of 2019 after serving most of her 18-month sentence.
I see that we are united.
She now serves in Russia's parliament, the State Duma, and was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury in 2022 over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. By then, Whalen had served 2 years of his 16-year prison sentence in Russia. There is more that could be done.
There were 4 opportunities to bring him home, and that didn't happen.
In 2020, negotiators were working on a prisoner swap. Whalen for Russian drug smuggler Konstantin Yaroshenko. So what happened there?
We took it to the White House, and there was just no interest at the time. It's complicated. I believe Donald Trump really wanted to bring Paul Whelan home, as he still does, and he talks about it, him and the rest of the Americans that are being held. But he didn't want to give anything in return.
So Yaroshenko was eventually swapped for Trevor Reed.
Correct.
Trevor Reed was arrested in 2019 after he was accused of assaulting a Russian police officer while intoxicated.
The investigator refused to take video evidence from the vehicle that I was in.
Bergman says Russia requested a 2-for-2 swap. Whalen and Reed for Yaroshenko and arms dealer Victor Bout, known as the Merchant of Death.
We have to take into account that our counterparts in Russia might be playing us as well.
The U.S. was hesitant to make a deal, including Bout, who had been convicted by a U.S. federal grand jury in 2011 of conspiracy to kill U.S. citizens.
No one should ever think that he can plot to kill Americans with impunity.
As President Biden prepared to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin for the 2021 Geneva summit, Bergman and Richardson suggested the White House bring up the possible prisoner swap.
Families of the detained Americans came up and we discussed it.
Bergman says no official proposals were ever put forward.
I'm not going to walk away on this.
Nearly a year later, only half the deal was executed.
I did it.
How? Thank you.
Thank you. 3 months ago.
Reed returned to the U.S. Yaroshenko was sent back to Russia and now serves as part of Putin's prison oversight chamber. Is this Russia's effort to continue grabbing people? Paul Whelan, Griner gets released.
When we went to negotiate over Trevor Reed and Paul Whelan, that was end of February, beginning of the war in Ukraine. We actually didn't know that Brittany Griner was already taken.
Just days before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, WNBA player Brittany Griner was arrested on smuggling charges. Russian airport officials say they found cannabis oil, an illegal substance, there in her luggage. Breaking tonight, the Biden administration has secured the release of American basketball player Brittany Griner from Russia, but the price it's paying is drawing criticism. Griner would be released for arms dealer Victor Bout, with the Russians refusing to let Whalen walk free.
This was not a choice of which American to bring home. We brought home Trevor Reed when we had a chance earlier this year. Sadly, for totally illegitimate reasons, Russia is treating Paul's case differently than Brittany's.
Whelan has to be frustrated. I mean, over time, he's been overlooked.
Correct.
Is there something that can shake the tree?
Unfortunately, we'll have to wait until the elections here because President Putin doesn't have any interest in making a deal that might make President Biden look good.
Bout returned to Russia and opened an exhibition of artwork he created while imprisoned in the U.S. He now serves as a member of a regional legislature and maintains his U.S. imprisonment, as Griner says of hers in Russia, was unjust.
The same outrage was in Russia when I was sentenced to 25 years. Many people would say, for what?
In recent years, Russian officials have arrested an American school teacher and a musician on drug charges. A dual citizen was taken into custody for alleged treason while trying to visit her family, and at least 2 American journalists, including Evan Gerskovich, are behind bars, accused of spying. Obviously, we have a personal relationship in that Evan, Wall Street Journal reporter under our corporate umbrella, and we've been doing stories and a lot of outside pressure. Is this one of these things where it could last for a long time?
I have, you might call me an optimist, but I believe that after November, no matter what the election results are in this country, there will be a period of opportunity to negotiate for his release. And I thank you for all the coverage that you do on him. I know you've done coverage with the American families of hostages in Gaza. And that coverage, again, from a negotiating point of view, it is so useful and critical in order to help us get people home.
While the United States and others can work with negotiators to call for the release of Americans, the government cannot state to an overseas court that a citizen is guilty or innocent, or provide legal advice or representation. The State Department currently has Russia at a level 4 travel advisory, urging Americans not to go there, partly due to the singling out of U.S. citizens for possible detention. We'll send it back to you.
Up next, the panel on our lead story, a social media post leading to questions about former President Trump's trial. First, beyond our borders tonight, the U.S. military-built pier designed to carry badly needed aid into Gaza by boat. It's reconnected to the beach in besieged territory. The section had broken apart in storms and rough seas. U.S. Central Command says food and other supplies will begin to flow soon. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is formally elected as the leader of the National Democratic Alliance Coalition. That group won the most number of seats in the country's national election. The 73-year-old leader will be sworn in as Prime Minister Sunday for a rare third. Our panel, USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers, Molly Hemingway, the editor-in-chief at The Federalist, and Fox News senior politics analyst Juan Williams. Panel, thanks for joining us this Friday. Let's just recap on this Facebook post that we've seen here. Right now, what the court in New York is looking at is this Facebook post. My cousin is a juror and says Trump is getting convicted. Thank you, folks, for all your hard work. That was posted before the verdict. A Trump campaign official told Fox News Digital they're investigating the matter, and the court says, as appropriate, the court informed the parties once it learned of this online content. So, Molly, you've got 34 convictions. We're waiting for sentencing in this Trump case. Does this upend this process anymore?
Well, certainly if this is legitimate, if this was an actual cousin of the juror, that's going to pose major problems and a likely mistrial, or at least it would in a normal court of law. But the bigger problem is that every single thing about this trial has been corrupt, whether it's the charges that were levied, how the judge handled the trial, what witnesses were allowed to testify, what things they were allowed to talk about, you know, where you had people giving information that was completely irrelevant, but the former FEC chairman wasn't allowed to testify, the jury instructions. So already Americans clearly think this is a trial that was not done well, and this does not help that situation at all for Democrats.
You know, Juan, this isn't just posted on any random Facebook page. This was on the New York court system's Facebook page. This seems pretty serious, no?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. It hasn't been investigated. But I think it gives glimmer of hope to people who think that it was an illegitimate process and think something was rigged, which is what former President Trump has always been advancing and claiming that America's a fascist country and all that. The fact is, a jury, which I don't think was influenced by anybody, found him guilty. Now, it's illegitimate if you have people talking about it as the deliberations are taking place, and I guess that's what Judge Merchan will have to look at.
You know, Francesca, you covered the White House. This is something that the White House wasn't really talking too much about, and then it started talking an awful lot about. I don't know if we're going to hear about this specifically, but this case is going to continue to be in the White House's press release and the president's statements. Do we expect that?
Well, and notably, President Biden is currently in France right now, and he'll be meeting with the French president tomorrow. Next week, he has the G7. So I realistically do not know how much we'll hear from the White House on any of these matters or the Biden campaign over the next week or so. But with respect to how President Biden has treated the case itself, he was trying to stay away from it because he didn't want to have these allegations from Republicans as if he was putting his thumb on the scale or meddling in the case somehow. And since the conviction has happened, he has started to talk more about it from a political perspective. And I think you will continue to hear him do that, but always rooted in the statement that Trump was convicted by a jury.
No.
And I think, there's some other stuff that's come out in recent weeks as well. So a lot of people say, what did Democrats have to do with this? We do know that the number 3 at the Department of Justice under Biden was sent up to New York to prosecute this trial. We also know that a Democrat law firm in New York, which is known for the head of that law firm being a bundler for Joe Biden, lent 3 attorneys to the Manhattan prosecutor to go after these people. That same law firm, actually the brother of Chuck Schumer, is a senior partner there. So there are Democrat fingerprints all over this. And again, it just speaks to why people are so worried about the destruction of rule of law under these prosecutions.
Let me just say, this is all noise. I mean, this is all static. The fact is that a jury of people who were selected, including by President Trump and his team, found the man guilty. Now there's all this conspiracies, rumors. It gives hope to people who want to say it's illegitimate, but the fact is that the former president of the United States was found guilty of 34 counts of fraud.
And Juan, never before in this country have we had one political party try to imprison their political
I
opponents.
don't think that's what's going on here,
are really
Molly.
concerned.
No,
They
I think
just
what's
don't
going on
want-
here is an attempt to distract from the fact that Trump was found to be corrupt.
Yeah, your problem is that Americans see what this
No,
trial
I
was.
think Americans see. In fact, the polls indicate this is starting to have some impact on the way they might vote, especially swing voters.
Okay, guys, that was a good exchange between the two of you. I want to bring it back to Fran. I'd ask, you guys are up next in the questioning, but now it's Francesca's turn. You look at what has now transpired in all of this, and this now is at a backdrop of the president's son, and he's on trial. And you had Jill Biden, the first lady, fly to France for the day and basically come back. The White House has embraced Hunter publicly. That's got to...
Lúc nào lên thăm ấy, khách lúc nào cũng phải ngồi bên bếp lửa anh ạ.
Bếp lửa.
Dạ, nhưng mà thôi ngồi bên này cũng được.
Không biết ba có nói được tiếng phổ thông không?
Mà không nói được tiếng phổ thông ạ.
Không nói được đúng không?
Bố có nhăn rồi. Có nhăn rồi. Ê, chị chào. Bà bảo là bà tóc giờ bây giờ không được gọn gàng nên ngại lắm.
Không sao đâu bà.
Cô chào.
Đi sao đấy?
Bà bảo bị đau.
Thường thế.
Như bà bị mủ ở đằng sau đầu hay sao ấy.
Hỏi bà có đi khám chưa?
Lý chiêu chào bà. Bà bảo tự dưng ở cứ đau hơn.
Hỏi xem bà có đi khám mua thuốc này kia chưa?
Có mua khá ở y sinh đó nè. Khá bố hai lý chá. Bà chưa đi khám đâu.
Chưa đi khám mà tội nhỉ.
Thì nhá một khám mà, sẽ lý cháu. Lý có y lịch nhau chưa hả? Lý có tụt nhau nó chỉ muốn lên thì ta có nhau Lý. Đây là bà bảo là bà ở một mình anh ạ. Còn các con của bà thì đi lấy chồng lấy vợ xa lắm. Bà bảo bà 71 tuổi rồi.
Đây là cái căn nhà này là bà ở một mình và cuộc sống với công việc rất là
Ê, anh nhìn nhà của bà thế này. Cũng không có gì, như bà cũng không có gạo. Nếu vào một gia đình á, mình nhìn cái nhà nếu là người mà có thì sẽ có nhiều bao gạo trồng lên, bà chắc chỉ có một. Chắc chỉ trồng được ít này. Có chim uống liền rồi. Bà bảo là bà không có ruộng.
Không có ruộng luôn.
Lâu con của bà mang một ít mang ra cho bà ăn thôi. Kiểu ở xa ấy.
Thấy cuộc sống ở đây cũng khá là gọi là khó khăn các bạn, chứ không phải là khó khăn bình thường mà cũng rất là khó khăn luôn. Như bà hiện tại bà cũng năm nay cũng tuổi thì cũng lớn rồi, mà bà còn xong một mình nữa.
Cái nào có tuổi?
Bà chia sẻ không có ruộng nữa. Thì cái đấy
tụi nó cho nó than nó tụi nó có.
Trong ý là trong có bà con không? Hay là
có tự tí nè. Bác mất lâu.
Mất lâu rồi.
Bà chỉ giờ một mình ở thôi.
Thương bà nhỉ.
Eli puchi lu thác con nhớ nó. Bà bảo là tại vì hoàn cảnh khó khăn ấy, không có tiền lấy vợ về đây nên là hai anh con của bà đi ở rể.
Thế là ở nhà vợ đúng không?
Đúng rồi. Nhưng người Mông ấy lấy thì phải có của hồi môn ấy, không có thì hay đi ở rể bên, nhất là nhà của vợ mà có điều kiện hơn. Thì đa phần là những người mà con trai thì ở nhà vợ ở rể. Em thấy hình như là bên Tây Nguyên là con trai cũng đi ở rể như nôi nhỉ?
Đúng rồi. Thế là ở đây cũng giống nhau nhỉ?
Dạ.
Nói chung cũng đi theo cái điều kiện đúng không? Nói chung thì chỗ nào mà mình cảm thấy mình làm ăn được thì mình có thể nuôi gia đình này kia thì mình ở đấy.
Thế là bà một mình sống ở đây.
Vâng, ok các bạn nhé. Thì hôm nay thì mình cũng cảm ơn Pơ cũng như là chị, cũng như là chị tên gì chị nhỉ? Chị Tí là chủ tịch truyền thông văn hóa ở huyện Than Uyên các bạn nhé. Cũng cảm ơn chị đã dẫn anh em tại đây để thăm bà. Thì hôm nay không có gì, nói chung thì hôm nay cũng là một cái chuyến đi chơi, đi tham quan thôi. Hôm nay cũng may mắn là có Pơ cũng như là có mọi người dẫn dắt để anh em đi tham quan tí một cái ngôi làng như là bây giờ là làng của bà đây. Thôi hôm nay Đu Siêu không có gì, Đu Siêu có tí gọi là số tiền để bà có thể mua bột ngọt hoặc là gạo này kia trong gia đình thôi nhá. Đây, hôm nay không có chuẩn bị sẵn. Đây. Vâng, đây. Vâng, rồi thế con cho con gửi 600 cho bà nhá.
Cho con giữa tên nó.
Vâng. Đấy.
Vâng. Bà bảo là anh cho nhiều thế này chắc là không có để mà dùng.
Không sao đâu. Với số tiền này bà có thể mua gạo này hoặc là bà đi mua thuốc nhé. Mua thuốc này rồi.
Có một chén nhiên nó, có một dứa chua, có một kho mo sa, có một dùng tên chén nó.
Nói bà là bà muốn mua gì cũng được.
Ôi chào, tiếng bông là ôi chào là cảm ơn.
Ok nhá, cảm ơn bà nhá. Bắt tay. Rồi, chúc sức khỏe bà nhá. Rồi. Rồi. Thôi chắc mình cũng xin phép để mình có thể đi ra ngoài rồi để biết thêm những cái cuộc sống ở đây nha các bạn nha. Mình cũng muốn là chia sẻ với mọi người. Đấy, cho thêm bánh cho bà ăn đi. Đi. Nè, bây giờ là để đây. Còn là mình có mua tí bánh rồi.
Để trên giường này ạ.
Bà ấy con để trên giường cho bà nhé.
Đi tên này là cho chắc với con nó.
Để đây.
Rồi,
thế thì chào bà nhá, bye bà nhá. Ok. Rồi thôi anh em mình
đi cái mua qua.
Đấy, các bạn thấy rồi đó. Em thấy thật sự em chưa có đi vào ban bao giờ, em thấy rất là khó khăn rồi.
Em đưa anh Siêu vào thăm một hộ gia đình đây được gọi là cũng là giàu ở Nhật Bản đấy.
Giàu Nhật Bản rồi.
Đây, anh nhìn thấy cái tấm gỗ người ta làm xong sơn bóng này là một hộ gia đình là được gọi là giàu của người Mông ấy.
Là gia đình có điều kiện ở trong cái khu làng này.
Đúng rồi ạ. Đây cái nhà gỗ rất là đẹp. Anh nhá chế à?
Chào chị.
Là sẽ có chế việc của tao à? Giống không à? Một hộp chế của tao. Chế mình tính xe. Chào đây, mau xe.
Rồi mọi người cùng với mình tham quan một cái hộ nhà gọi là có điều kiện, gọi là nhà giống như ở trong làng mình gọi là nhà dâu rồi đấy đúng không?
Đúng rồi. Nhà dâu ấy. Đây nhà đây làm nhà gỗ này, đây em xịn sò đây được gọi là nhà có điều kiện nhất trong bản đấy.
Nhìn là mình biết rồi.
Vâng.
Là biết là có giá trị rồi.
Dạ.
Cho qua này cho bánh này. Đây.
Đó.
Rồi, tụi em kia qua đây.
Nó tí nó có chị ăn miếng nhỏ nó. Có chị có chả miếng nhỏ nó tả nó.
Có khi thấy anh lạ thế này. Ôi em là dễ thương nè. Đây bé ơi, bé.
Nè.
Cầm hai cái luôn. Cầm hai cái đi. Cầm hai cái. Không có tay để cầm được rồi, cầm hai cái đi ơi. Chị ơi, cô nói được tiếng phổ thông không?
Các của hai là to lớn nhất là nó. Chị không nói được đâu anh. Đây mà mình vào thăm nhà chị xíu. Mà có khách có trọ sếp ít việc một tao à? Chị bảo mở cửa đi. Đó. Wow, nhà đẹp quá.
Wow. Nhà rất là sang trọng luôn.
Quá đẹp luôn.
Đây là theo đi siêu được nghĩ đây là nhà, đây là đại gia trong khu này luôn.
Đúng rồi. Em thấy là từ nãy mình đi một vòng mình thấy nhà chị đẹp nhất. Sạch sẽ nữa nè.
Có kế bằng cây củ này kia luôn.
Đây này. Nhà sạch sẽ lắm ấy.
Wow. Nhà đây là khá là nhiều tiền đấy các bạn, chứ không phải là ít tiền đâu.
Nhà gỗ này nhiều tiền đấy nhỉ.
Chuyến đi lần này thì mình cũng gọi là tình cờ thôi, cũng là một cái chuyến đi tham quan một tí thôi, nhưng mà hôm nay thì mình cũng không có chuẩn bị nhiều. Thì cũng xin thay mặt cho anh em thì cảm ơn kênh bếp trên bán này, rồi cảm ơn chị kênh gì nhỉ? Chị hay đi, rồi cũng như là cảm ơn tất cả mọi người đang có đồng hành cùng với mình một chuyến đi lần này.
Nhưng mà em cũng là phải thay mặt cho bà con Huế Bắc cũng như là đồng bào bà con của Lai Châu thì cảm ơn anh Đơ Siêu. Hôm nay anh đã lên thăm bản người Mông và cũng chia sẻ những hình ảnh rất là đẹp của Than Uyên cũng như là Lai Châu. Thực sự là rất là cảm ơn anh luôn.
Ok, anh cũng cảm ơn em và cảm ơn mọi người.
Thì nó than à.
Xin chú này, phải xin chú như này. Xin chú.
Các bà bảo là vui lắm. Cảm ơn anh đã gửi những cái gì?
Ngày này.
Together we will make our nations stronger, our countries safer, our culture richer, our people freer, and the world more beautiful than ever before.